Welcome back, you guys, to the Butterfly SZN podcast. I am on today with a dear friend of mine, the very first male guest we have ever had. And we get into so much. Spiritual dictionaries, unintended consequences of becoming the person you've always been meant to be. And how do you even become the person that you've always been meant to be? What does it look like to be present in your body? What does it look like to stand on your no? Like, we go through a ton. I know you're going to love this episode as much as I loved it too. And be sure to listen to the very end because I feel like we drop in. Welcome to the Butterfly SZN podcast.
Yeah. I'm super excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm laughing because this is a more formal vibe than we've ever had.
Definitely is. So
for context, for listeners, for watchers, Jamil is the husband of one of my best friends. We've known each other since college before we were our true selves, you know what I mean? Very 100%. Much figuring life out. Mm-hmm. And there's been a lot of versions of us before this point, and that's kind of what I want to get into today.
Yeah, it's been crazy. Obviously, like you said, known each other since college, and probably 10 years later, we're out of college and into new things and new phases. So I'm excited to be here. I'm a little nervous, but I'm going to just put that out there right now. But I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to be a part of it.
Yeah, I'm glad that you put that out there. I feel like when you can address whatever it is and you just kind of diffuse the situation. So I'm going to start with, your transformation. I mentioned that I've known you since college. I've known Janae since college, and we've become a bajillion different people since then. And I feel like we're in a season where we're coming home to ourselves or who we've always been meant to be. Mm-hmm. And I think that people could see, your career, the accolades, and all of the things that you've got to this point. But I feel like that's just a fraction of who you are. What I've seen on the growth standpoint, personal growth, irrespective of everything you've ever done, is that you are so sure, so confident in your no, in many ways that I even aspire to be and have, but there was a lot had to have happened for you to be able to be that.
Yeah, for sure.
And talk to me about what was the thing that sparked change? Why were you I need to change. I need to be the best version of me. What is that? What was that? What resistance was coming up at that time?
Yeah, I don't think there was one point in time that really sparked it. I think I look at it as over time. Okay. Even in my career, every offseason I constantly wanted to go back to the drawing board and grow as a player. So post-career, when I kind of got into the mode of what am I doing to better myself, I applied that same thing, so how can I grow as a person, as a man, father, husband, brother, son, whatever the case may be. And that looks different in every situation. But I think that would be the biggest thing. I'm still not okay calling it a transformation for me because I think it's a decision I have to make every day, this is when your feet hit the ground in the morning. Who are you going to be? Are you going to continue to grow, continue to push forward and do the things that allow you to reach your highest self? Or are you going to get lazy with that process? And so I've always been super goal-driven and self-motivated. And I think it just looks different for me now.
So talk to me about applying those same goals and principles to your personal life. I feel like when it comes to career, when it comes to how you make money, that's an easy thing to do because there's a means to an end. How can I be better so that I'm on this team, so that I make this money and I can do X, Y, and Z, right? But then when it comes to your personal development, those two things potentially might not need to go hand in hand. Yeah. It could only be applied to work, and then you get your means to an end. When you first applied it to yourself, what was the thing when you're okay, how can I be better? Well, what was the thing that you needed to be better at?
Yeah, I think it's hard for me to pinpoint the certain thing. I think what I was looking for was how I can measure success outside of the game.
And what were those measurables?
That's the hard thing. Like, it's so much harder to measure your success in your personal life. I think as you go through it and you start to learn how to set boundaries and your triggers and things like that, and you get in these situations again, that's when you realize, oh, I've grown. Like, that's a checkbox on the success side of things. So it looks so different for me these days as far as how I can measure it. But I do have, when I reflect on certain things that have happened, I do have those moments where I'm like happy about how far I've come.
That's so interesting, that how your brain works. Mine works. I have an issue, I got to fix the issue and then get to the thing. But your brain is like, how can I be better? Oh, a way to be better is to set boundaries.
Yeah.
When do boundaries need to be set? When I set them here. And then watching the outcomes play out. Because I'm like, well, what did you need to be better at? Was it like, I don't know, not like negative self-talk? Was it like laziness? I mean, who knows what it is? But you're saying I approach it from a place of just being a complete whole person generally looks like one of the things, boundaries.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's like the football in me, the offensive lineman in me. Like, you go back, you watch game film, and you watch every play. What could I have done better in this play? And then the following week, you have an opportunity to work on those things during practice. So I have to take what I'm good at from a aspect of who I am from a player point of view and apply that into my personal life. And I think that serves me well when I'm dealing with these type of situations.
Yeah. So could we talk about boundaries?
Yeah.
What types of boundaries were once hard for you to make, but are now much easier for you to make?
Yeah, I just think dealing with people in general, like
I honestly, some days I'm like, I wish I could be Jamil, because sometimes it's really difficult for me to put a boundary like that.
No, it is. Boundaries are tough. Boundaries are tough to set. And I heard a quote a couple weeks ago. I think it was Trent Shelton that said, boundaries aren't walls, they're bridges, and it kind of gets you to where you want to go. And that put things in perspective for me. Over the course of the last few years, I've had to set boundaries with friends, family, whoever the case may be. And it's always hard, because they're your boundaries. Like, and people have a hard time respecting the things that you don't want to happen or that you don't feel comfortable with. So
especially if you've allowed it to happen for so long. It's like, you've been giving them gold. The moment you give them silver, they're like, what?
Yeah, they have a hard time digesting that. But the thing that gives me a little, I guess, peace with it is what truly makes me feel comfortable, And I'm long past the days where I give up my comfortableness to, appease someone else.
Yeah.
Like, for me, obviously that comes with certain situations. Like, I'm not just, but what makes me happy, what makes me comfortable, what makes me feel good in situations, that is how I base everything these days.
That's such an act of self-love. I did these like quotes today to post on Butterfly SZN, and I was talking about self-love because I've been on my own self-love journey, and it started with such a different way that you start, right? Mine is like, okay, I'm feeling resistance in this thing. How do I change it? And, you start to realize, oh, well, maybe it's codependency. And then from codependency, it's like self-worth. And then from self-worth, it's self-love. And then it's like, well, how do you love yourself? It's like you keep going like down this rabbit hole. Yeah. And there's so many ways to have self-love. And one of them is not, doing something to make someone else feel comfortable and you're feeling uncomfortable. That is actually abandonment. That's not self-love. And so it's so cool to hear you talk about your self-love journey. Really is like, I'm just trying to be better. All roads lead back to this like act of radical self-love.
Yeah, for sure. Self-love is tricky because, like you said, it's hard to figure out how do you love yourself better. Because
you would never identify, like, no one would ever be like, I don't love myself, right? If you're like, oh, you need to work on your self-love and self-worth, you're like, I'm fine.
Yeah, I think a big piece of the self-love is, and I've spoken about this a little bit, is the inner critic. Like, what are you telling yourself? I know, like, for me, my inner critic is a beast, like, in a bad way. You know, like, I've done the affirmations, the journaling. I've always been super critical of myself. Like, I think that's the player in me, you know? But the inner critic is something that you have to definitely get a control of in order to have self-love, in my opinion. And that looks different for everyone, depending on your life experiences, you know? So I would say that's the biggest difference for me, is being able to control my inner critic.
Do you feel like your inner critic got you success initially?
I think yes, but not in a healthy way. Like, I was driven by almost fear of failure, or, you know, telling myself, oh, they don't think you can do this, so go show them you can do this. That works in athletics. It's very tangible. Like, you can see that you did something right on tape, or in the weight room, or in training. Personal life, no one's walking around filming you unless you get down that way, but it's just way different. It looks different, you know? So I had to learn how to kind of flip the script with my inner critic, and that was a hard thing. Like, I'm journaling the same things over and over 5 times a day, you know?
The same bad things or the same good things?
Both, actually. Like, you know, I would say for someone that's really dealing with the inner critic, write down, my therapist had me do this, but write down on one side of a sheet of paper what your inner critic is telling you in a negative sense. And on the flip side, write the positives about that, the things that you want to believe about yourself. I think that's important. I've done that exercise multiple times. So, and that's the thing, like, this is it's a process, you know?
So
like,
what's the purpose of writing that? Like, what's changed within you to, like, now write this, the opposite?
I don't know. I think everyone learns a different way. Everyone's mind works different. You know, like, for me, I like writing things down and putting pen to paper.
Yeah.
And that does something in my mind, you know, to help create something new. So, you know, it might look different for someone else. They may want to speak those words out loud, or, you know, whatever the case may be, say them quietly to themselves. But for me, it was definitely, you know, writing these things down and reading it, spending time with it. That's the biggest thing. Spend time with the things that you're writing down in order to actually see how it makes you feel. Yeah,
I think that's really beautiful, because I feel like from feelings you can map down to, you go from your feelings, and then that'll kind of show you, like, okay, well, I have this is what I'm fearful of based on this feeling, and the fear can take me to an unmet need that I had in childhood, and how I keep operating on that same pattern. Which is why I think journaling is a beautiful tool, and even in the exercise that you're doing is beautiful, because sometimes we need proof. And whenever my inner critic will only look for proof to affirm my inner critic. So if I write something that's opposite of what my inner critic is saying, I can give myself an opportunity to look for proof of the other thing, so that it's not the inner critic just kind of like taking precedence.
Yeah.
You made a comment. You said everyone kind of learns and does things differently. The other day, what's really dope, I think, about our relationship with, you know, together with our partners and collective, like, as a group, we do this, like, manifestation dinner where we get vulnerable, we say what we're working on, and we say, like, you know, things that we want to change. And you shared this really beautiful story about how you would go like this in games. Yeah. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah. Like I said,
I don't know if it was something.
Yeah, it was this basically on my helmet. And that was like, there's a split second for me in games or practices, whatever the case may be, where I had negative thoughts creep into my mind, whether it's you're going to lose this rep, or you're going to take the wrong step, something like that. So I just kind of developed a way for me to feel like I'm pulling that thing out of my mind. You know, it wasn't enough for me to try to tell myself that that's not going to happen. I just needed something to symbolize that you're getting rid of that, you know? And I think I think it works. In my opinion, it worked for me. So I feel like sometimes we physically have to do things, whether you got to scream or yell, whatever the case may be, like do things that help your body feel at ease or help your mind feel comfortable. So that was something that I used to do that it just helped me come back down to earth and kind of keep me level-headed.
That's so dope.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you about journaling because I know you journal a lot.
I do journal a lot.
Have you always journaled a lot?
I have not. No. I would say journaling probably past 2 years. And it's definitely helpful. I was somebody that, I guess, everyone starts journaling at different times in their lives based on what they're trying to accomplish. When I started just wanting to get my thoughts out in a healthy way, that's when I started journaling. And it's definitely helped me. I find myself journaling about whatever, whether having a good day, bad day, whether I want to change the way that my day is going. Those are the times that I'll spend time journaling. And I think, like I said, everyone just has different processes in how they learn. And for me, I learned a lot about myself when I started journaling because I'm obviously writing down my thoughts. And I think if you look at my journaling from 2 years ago, it looks completely different from now.
In terms of how you talk to yourself via the journal?
In terms of how I talk to myself, in terms of the things that I am, putting on paper. I think when I first started, it was more so about just focusing on gratitude. Like that was my biggest thing. Like obviously, you do research on how you can kind of get to a better place mentally and spiritually, emotionally, all those things. And gratitude for me was the thing that struck me the most. So I spent a lot of time focusing on what I was grateful for in the first part of my journaling. And now it's like what I'm trying to accomplish or what I am accomplishing, how I feel that day, and just things like that, like things to keep me present. I think that's the biggest thing. What keeps me present, and journaling is one of them.
I don't think people understand the importance of being present. I just had a guest on the podcast talking about like, you got to be in your body and you got to like drop in. And I'm like, those words I feel like we can understand now because there's been work leading up to. Yeah. And I feel like before I was, like on my like self-love shit, I didn't know that I was ever not present.
Yeah.
So do you have a time?
I would like to think I'm very present.
You are very present.
Yeah, I would like to think that I'm very self-aware. I'm always aware of my surroundings and people that I'm around, and I'm focused on being present.
Was that always or post-journaling?
I would say to an extent. I feel like I've always had that trait, but it's gotten stronger since journaling. Being able to kind of reset every day. Obviously, I start my morning out with breath work. Like if that is, some people have their morning coffee, like I am morning breath work. That's my biggest practice that keeps me present. So I've done a lot of breath work, and I think that helps tremendously to just kind of, like I said, reset your day, restart your day in a positive way, and that helps a lot.
There's talk online about how, and it's interesting because I have, my audience is female. There's a lot of talk online, at least like in our ethos, small corner of the internet, that, breath work and cold plunge and things like that are maybe more masculine approaches to being present, but also that some people are just doing it to check a box and they're not actually present in that practice. They're doing it,
just because it's a trend.
Or you think that if I do this thing, just the action only, that I will get whatever. It's like maybe going to hot yoga, you're getting a workout in, but like if you can focus on your breath and drop in at the times you can drop in. For me, I literally feel like I have a divine source to God. 100%. So much drops in for me, and I'm like,
yeah.
Right? Like, this is what I've been working on for 2 weeks, and I finally got the clarity around it.
No,
you know
seriously.
what I mean? So do you feel like you can speak to somebody who might be listening, who does those things, but isn't aware that they're present? Like, how do you know that you're present?
That's a good question. I think as far as knowing if you're present,
or how do you know when you're present versus when you're not?
I like whoever you had on your podcast that said drop into your body. Like, I think a lot of people hear that, but they're not listening to that. Like, listen to that advice and just try it, like try actually whatever it looks like for you, whether that's laying down and not doing anything for 10 minutes, but focusing on what your mind is telling you. Like, that is how you begin to build the awareness around presence, for being present for me, in my opinion. I think when you're doing these things such as cold tubbing, journaling, like, your focus needs to be on that actual thing. If you're cold tubbing for 2 minutes and 30 seconds, whatever the case may be, like, be aware of that time that you're spending in the cold tub for 2 minutes and 30 seconds and try to listen to your body. What parts are going numb? What's your breathing like? Is my breathing fast? Oh, I need to slow my breathing down. Like, in my opinion, when you start to like be able to separate those things and actually tune into it, that's when you start to build your presence.
Totally.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you were able to break it down like that. I had a moment this morning at like 10 extra minutes, and I was like, you know what? I'm not going to scroll my phone. I'm just going to like be present for a second.
Yeah.
And like a song's playing in my head, and then I'm like looking at the like colors behind my eyelids, and then I'm like, well, I'm not breathing. Let me try to breathe deeper. Like, all of these things start in just chaos.
But that's fine though. I think everyone thinks that when you're trying to, I guess, meditate or, breathe, that nothing's going to come to your mind. Mm-hmm. Like, for me, I think the most satisfying part of being able to slow my mind down was when I was doing I still meditate daily, but when I really first started, there was a point in time where I noticed things come into my mind, but I'm also noticing that I'm able to get rid of those things. Mm-hmm. And that's the satisfying part, when you're able to go 10 minutes, 20 minutes straight, and it's just, I'm truly focused on, if you're listening to a meditation, I'm truly focused on that audio of that meditation. Things are going to pop in your head.
Right.
And it looks different for everyone. Like, people can meditate for 2 minutes and it be successful for them.
Right.
Like, do what helps you and then grow from there. I think so many people get discouraged of like, I tried to meditate for 5 minutes, but so many things came to my mind, but the action that you're putting towards it is actually helpful, in my opinion.
No, I think you're absolutely right. Because then at the before the 10-minute mark, I've been working on like feeling safe in my body, safe in my relationship, safe in my marriage. Not because the people that I'm around make me feel unsafe, but that because I'm feeling unsafe about myself, that becomes a projection in my relationships. And so I just meditated with no agenda, chaos leading up, like a Chris Brown song, like, and I'm like, Aisha, just try to breathe, focus on your breath. And then I, like, right as I was going to end, before my alarm went off, it was like, you're feeling safe. And I was like, oh shit, I am feeling safe these days. What has changed around my safety? And then I started journaling about it, and I'm like, fuck yeah, that's changed. But like, I wouldn't have been able to, one, celebrate myself, have that awareness if I didn't just take the 10 minutes to do that, knowing, chaos ensues,
For
right?
Sure.
So I want to talk a little bit about your time with the journal, the Butterfly SZN journal. Was there any new awareness or affirmed awareness around the work that you did with that?
I think obviously it's centered around the inner child work, and that to me is very helpful. I think that a lot of us go through life and we're not really aware of our triggers and the things that make us feel a certain way. For me, like when I'm triggered by something, my body gets hot, or, my ears get hot. Like, I think people need to tune into that. Like, what is your body telling you about certain situations that you're in? And just listen to your body. That's a trigger for you,
Yeah.
I don't know if you have anything like that.
I do. I didn't want to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
But I do want to, I'm going to put it back on you.
All right.
You talked about your body getting hot.
Yeah.
Specific areas or the whole head to toe heat?
Definitely head, ears, like from the neck up for me.
Yeah.
And it's, at first I didn't really recognize, and I think this goes back to the whole point about the book, because I've done inner child work. I didn't really recognize when I'm in these situations that my body was literally telling me you are uncomfortable or this is triggering for you. And as I've become more present and started doing a lot of the work, I'm just listening to my body. And if I feel that, I'm like, oh, that's a trigger, or that's something that you need to change, or you're not comfortable in this situation. So I think, like I said, ties all back into the book about being aware of the things that you've carried from your childhood up until now that you may not have known were triggers for you, but they definitely are. If you tune in, you have to be present in order to know what your triggers are, or else you just walking around mad all day. Like,
right.
Oh, I'm pissed about this situation. Like, you don't know why you're pissed, but it's because of this thing that happened earlier in the day that you haven't addressed yet.
Right. And you might feel like it's someone else's fault as to why I'm pissed.
Yeah.
Which there's a dynamic of that is true, right? But for you to change your life, only you and your own agency and yourself can change that thing, whether that be a boundary or removing yourself from those situations so that you're not angry. But the reason why I got so lit up when you were talking about your body getting hot is because you told me to, and I want you to like go deep on this, but I'm just going to tell you what it did for me. You said, I've been doing this spiritual dictionary. And I'm like, what is this spiritual dictionary? You're like, like when things come up, or if I see signs, or if I see, and I don't know if the body heat was one of them, but I just like make note of it. And I was like, I'm going to start doing that because I feel like I'm being spoken to in certain instances. And I feel like, God speaks to us in whatever way you receive information.
Yeah.
My husband, like, I truly feel like God be talking to him in movies and TV shows. He's like, oh my God, I feel like, and I'm like, you got that out of that?
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean? But for me, it's like, I have signs or like repeated signs or different synchronicities or like whatever. And so I've been doing a spiritual dictionary. And
it's crazy, right?
So sundogs, which are like a rainbow around the sun with two like lights on the side, apparently they're very rare. I've been seeing them in succession, and every time I see them now, I like write down what happened so that over time the pattern can tell me what it means. It's like you're about to go through some like fucked up transformation, but it will be better on the other side. Like that's what a sundog means for me.
Absolutely.
But over time that I was doing a spiritual dictionary, I noticed that when someone is talking, I don't know, this is like a loose interpretation because the dictionary is like you have to fill in the definition and it takes time to do that.
For sure.
And when someone's talking, when I feel like they're speaking truth, the behind my ribs gets the chills, only back there. I think that's what that means. Whatever truth it is, I'm like, they must be saying something real because I'm feeling lit up on my back now. Yeah. So I was on a walk with someone and they were talking and I'm like, that's it. And they're like, well, what made you say that? I'm like, well, my back's, I have some chills on my back right now. Yeah. So talk to me about a spiritual dictionary. This is literally like the most slept on thing of all time.
Yeah, I think, there's obviously signs that we get, and that looks different for everyone. But when you constantly, like for me, and I don't want to give away what's in my dictionary because
wait, is that a bad thing? I just told everybody what's in my dictionary.
I just, for me, I think it's something that, and it's okay that you did that. But
it's gonna have to be.
For me, I am still in the process of figuring everything out. But the things that I hear constantly or see constantly when I'm asking for signs or guidance or signals, those things to me are very...
I mean, somebody could exploit them if they're easily manufacturable things.
They
But I
could.
mean, how
No
can
one-
you create a sun-dog? That's a little bit harder.
Or chills
on the back.
Yeah, chills, you know? I think mine, I haven't had any like bodily things that...
No, you do.
Well, those are triggers for me though.
Okay.
I feel like a spiritual dictionary is confirmation.
Okay.
So I separate the two.
Okay.
One is like, okay, you need to fix this. And one is you're in alignment, in my opinion. Like,
so for a definition, since we're not going to expose the secrets of Jamil's spiritual dictionary,
That's top
which
secret.
fair, I very much respect that.
Yeah.
But how would someone go about creating their own spiritual dictionary?
it's it comes back to being present. You know, I think when people are present, they can notice the things that they constantly hear every day, or you see this bird fly by you every day. Like, if you're not present, you just think, oh, it's a bird flying by me when I just got done praying. You know, I don't really know what that means, but I think you just have to be present, and you have to really tune into the things that are showing up for you consistently. That's how I see it. And I know it's, you know, some people may be like, you know, there's birds flying around every day. Not if you see it at the same time, or, you know, when you just get done meditating or praying or whatever the case may be. So I think a spiritual dictionary, a lot of these topics that we're talking about look different for everyone. And it could be a siren. You know, it could be a siren every day in the morning that you hear, or a dog that's barking every day. Sometimes it's good and bad, but you got to be able to tune into those things. And I think that being present is the first way to start your dictionary.
Yeah. So I know there probably aren't very many rules around spiritual dictionary, but what I feel like, two things. One, I'm going to speak about like an exploitation of those things, and then I want to land on like maybe something that people can try for their own spiritual dictionary if they don't know where the presence of being back in your body is. Now, the exploitation is, I feel like, you know, we see signs, synchronicities, and people will use angel numbers as a thing to kind of be like, oh, I'm on the right path, or what does this angel number mean? I just saw it. This is what's happening. But I think where it becomes exploited, which affirms why you might not share with people all that's in your spiritual dictionary, is when people will price things out at an angel number price.
Yeah.
To just like a catch-all for anyone who has 444 on their dictionary list. This
good.
price point's 444. It must be for you, right? It's an exploitation.
For sure.
When you know that people are taking action on these signs. But I think another one could potentially be you ask for a sign, a specific sign, and when you see it, you can presume that that's a thing, and maybe you're asking for that every time, or that's kind of your guidepost for one thing. I feel like in my spiritual dictionary, things that are pending to be filled out based off signs that I've had, because I feel like after two or more is a pattern, you can kind of like deduce what it means.
I look at it a little different.
Tell me.
I think it's up to us to catch it, whether it's...
Okay, but there are people who are struggling with presence. You know what I
There
mean?
is.
And
There
it's
is.
like, I mean, I guess it really is like a pot of gold when you could be present and you can find a sign.
Yeah, I think this is just my take. I believe that it may happen one time, you know? And if if you catch it, you catch it. If not, it's up to you to continue to stay on the path.
Yes. Okay. So when I said two or more is a pattern, the first time I seen a sundog, I was like, oh, this is interesting. It might mean something. It was on a very like important day for me. So I just wrote it down as one. And then when I seen it again, I'm like, okay, this is what was happening at that time. Let me see if I can find the meaning around what this specific thing might mean for me. So then I seen it again. I'm like, okay, they kind of coincide. I seen it another time, and I'm like, oh, here's what the meaning is based off these 3 instances. Separate from what I was saying is you can maybe say, I want to see a purple flamingo today.
Yeah, that's tough.
It's tough, but who knows? Maybe you see a cartoon of something or something or something, right?
Yeah, there's absolutely ways, in my opinion. I don't know how often you'll see a purple flamingo. That's a tough ask, but you may get it, you know. And
this isn't in Cam's spiritual dictionary, so it's not out of his dictionary, but he did one time ask for a red balloon.
Yeah. And he saw a red balloon.
It was midnight that night. He said he wanted to see it that day. This is what he should be doing. Like, I need you to show me this balloon. Like, I need it. It was like almost midnight. We were watching some movie, and in the background, a fucking floating red balloon.
Yeah.
He didn't tell me that he asked for a red balloon. It was until we saw it. He was like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah.
Which is why I'm like, you gotta be talking to him in movies, and I don't know what they have going on with the movie thing.
But that's alignment. You know, like it was supposed to happen. He was supposed to see it. Like I think sometimes we have such a hold on like, show me this sign. Like it's going to happen if it's supposed to happen. And if it doesn't happen, just keep going. Like, you know, I think that's my biggest thing. Like when I was able to just kind of let go of feeling the control of everything, I was more happy with the progress that I was making, you know, like instead of being upset that I'm having negative self-talk or I'm feeling down, depressed, anxious, whatever the case may be, like I had to lean into that, but also let go of the control of when this is going to show up for me in a good way.
Right.
Because so many people want control of that. And as long as you're doing the work, like it's going to come.
What did control look like for you? I feel like people use words like control, I'm controlling, or they'll use it as a badge of honor. Not that you're doing it in this instance. I just want somebody to hear themselves in you. What did control look like? Like, I think I'll give you some examples of what I didn't know control was. I didn't know control was people pleasing. That's a form of trying to control and keep the peace, right? You think you're just trying to keep it nice, but really you're trying to control everyone in the room.
Yeah.
If you just release control, who cares about what everyone in the room is doing? You just only focus on you, which you're really great at. Then you're not people pleasing. You're releasing control, and whatever is meant to happen will always happen, regardless of if you show up in that room and people please or if you don't. What did control look like for you?
For me, control looked like pressing for opportunities, like going the extra mile to try to make something happen. You know, like all goes back to athletic days. Like I would like to think I'm still athletic, but it goes back to like me controlling the things I can control in football. Like I know for a fact if I lift this weight, I'm going to get stronger. I know that if I run this amount, my endurance is going to be better. Personal life, it's a little different, you know, like I just had so much like, oh no, I can make this happen, that when it didn't happen, it's a humbling feeling, but in a good way if you take it that way, which, you know, I grew to be able to understand it that way. So yeah, I would say for me, it just looked like pressing really hard for progress post-career, like, you know, trying to force the next opportunity, trying to force a relationship that I thought may have panned out a different way. Like, and really I was ignoring the signs that you don't need to be pressing for this stuff. You need to be working on yourself so that when these opportunities do come, you are mentally, spiritually, emotionally able to take advantage of them.
I want to give you an example of how I've done that recently, and I think we might have talked about this at dinner, but just for the sake of the podcast, because I would be curious to know, what does a tangible example look like that for you? So for me, going above and beyond to force something to work, I had this opportunity where before my book had come out, where this person was like, hey, I read your book. I would love for you to come speak with my community. And I already had an obligation that week, but I was able to get out of it on a specific day. And so my response was, if I can do this in flow, me thinking like, oh, I'm in alignment. I'm like, if I can do this in flow, like if it's easy watch me slowly abandon myself. If it's easy for me to buy the flight, if it's easy for me to cancel my obligation, and if my book manufacturer can print out all these books, like 100%, I will go and do it.
Yeah.
I gave and gave and gave and gave, as opposed to being like, if you could, it would feel really good for me if you could buy books for everybody at my flight, I'll be there. And at the time, I wouldn't have felt like that was pushing to make an opportunity work. And what ended up happening was the person was like, hey, we can't actually fit you in the schedule.
Yeah.
I had already bought the flight. I had already bought all the fucking books. I had already done everything. And guess who was resentful? Me. And mad at that person. But it wasn't about that person. I gave every single thing away to make an opportunity happen, because I thought, well, maybe this opportunity will be the thing that will, whatever, you insert whatever good outcome, right?
For sure.
And I think the reason why I'm hoping you could give an example is because I feel like if you haven't done the work, you might not know that I gave all my agency away in that correspondence. You wouldn't know. You'd be like, oh no, you're just trying to be a go-getter and you're doing all the right things. Yeah. But like,
there's a fine line.
Fine line. So can you give an example of where you tried to push something and you might not have known that you were pushing it, but the Jamil now would not do that again?
Yeah. I think for me, if I could give an example on that, it would be maybe, certain opportunities that I had lined up that things weren't going smoothly for the opportunities to play out in my favor. But because it looked like gold to me, I was going above and beyond to try to meet that opportunity or try to please this person so that these things just kind of lined up. And that's not me at all. But post-career, I really thought that I could just jump into, I obviously started the podcast and things like that. This is 2 years post-career.
Right.
But at the time, 2 years ago, I really thought that I would have a smooth transition in figuring out what I wanted to do next. And, oh yeah, this person called me. They want to give me this opportunity. Cool, I'm taking it. Like, it just didn't work that way, Right. And I found myself, I'm not the guy, like, I don't do too much, And when I find myself, when I look back at certain moments and I'm like, nah, you were doing too much. Like, that's not you. Like, I definitely believe that, like, the work that I do personally aligns me for opportunities. And that is more so what I should have focused on at that time, instead of thinking, you see a lot of the stories of guys transition out the NFL, they get into broadcasting, they get into podcasting right away, they start a business, whatever the case may be. That was not me. Like, but I also had a lot of growing to do within myself in those 2 years before I could feel even comfortable enough. I would not do something like this 2 years ago. Like, I'd have told you no,
Right.
So like something like that, for me, that's what it looked like. Just pressing, going out of my comfort zone to connect with people. Obviously, I think there's ways to keep relationships alive, healthy relationships that benefit you and benefit the other person. But I'm not that person that is going to stretch myself thin to please someone else. Like, that's just not me, and that's not where I feel comfortable at.
I definitely feel like, and I've always felt this way, but now from an embodied place, and this is to your point, that, I feel like there's a correlation with self-work and success. a correlation, not a if this then that. And I think that's the issue. If I work on myself, then I will get success. That's a transactional thing, and that's not, that's the wrong energy.
That's the wrong way to look at it. I think if you're doing it for that, it's truly not authentic, you know?
And I think you actually never end up getting that. You will only get people, situations, experiences to help rid you of that thing for you to finally be like, okay, I'm not doing that anymore. Right? And I feel like, you know, to your point on how people will come to you with opportunities and say, hey, this is this and that. And obviously, however it's expressed is like that it's gold, right? Because they're expressing it to you. But I think that we look at, or at least me, I've looked at my life in my own singular silo, right? If I'm like, I want to do this and I think this will be great and I want to go out and do whatever. And the moment I get an opportunity, I'm like, oh, this must be the thing. But I'm not realizing that there's also people who, I don't think it's always intentional, but there are people who will siphon your energy and say, hey, you're shiny. Come partner with me on this thing. Look how great it could be. Right? I mean, that's happened to me. And for someone who's seeking...
It's almost a trap.
It's yes. And I would say I use trap lightly because I feel like, and I'm sure you might feel this way too, every person, every relationship, every anything is just for your growth. Everybody is the best blessing for the thing.
If you have that perspective.
If you have that perspective. I have a friend who was telling me that they were like, you know, going through some things and like wanted to leave this person. And I'm like, that person is the best person for you because the work that you're going to have to do to, one, get out of the situation, the person you're going to have to become is the best thing that could ever fucking happen to you because you're going to be who you want to be.
Absolutely.
But like, you gotta sit in the shit for a minute. You know what I mean? And so I think that if I'm understanding you correctly, it's that like there was a lot of growth that was happening, and in some of these experiences, they developed a lot of different character in you for you to actually post-career do something that's divinely aligned.
It's crazy because like now I'm completely fine with turning down opportunities regardless of the money that's on the table or whatever it looks like. If I don't feel, I've learned to like kind of listen to my intuition, and if I don't feel like it's right for me, there's a way for me to turn it down but keep the relationship open and you know, but as opposed to some time ago where I was like, yes, like this is it, you know, like I think sometimes, you know, everyone wants to progress, and I think sometimes we get in this mode of wanting to say yes because we think it's a stepping stone to get into the next spot. But there's also ways to say no and step to the next portion of your life or opportunity. Like some of those things are tests, you know, and like I've failed tests and I've passed tests that I think have been, you know, essential in growth.
I think people can look at you right now and say, wow, like, you know, he feels like he's on the other side of things. I still feel like I might not be able to say no to opportunities. I would love to know what have been like unintended consequences for the like that are perceivably not so great, and positive consequences for this transition of who you've become to this point, Jamil, today.
I would, you know, for those people, like I would not say I'm on the other side of things. Like I said, I feel like it's a constant decision every day. And at the end of the day, like, what makes you happy? What gives you that fire to get up every morning? That's my biggest thing. And I base every situation, opportunity off, is this where I'm going to be able to grow and progress the way that I want to progress? So regardless of what that looks like, whatever comes across my table, like, how am I going to feel? I basically place myself in situations that are being presented to me.
What does that look like?
It's, you know, it looks different. Like, say you get offered a job and, you know, this job isn't technically what you want to be doing, but the salary's great. For me, the salary does not outweigh what I'm going to feel like every day walking into that space.
Why? Because some people would be like, okay, I'll do whatever.
I think because and by all means get your bread. You know what I'm saying? Like, get your money. If you are in a situation where you need to get that money, get that bread. like that's my opinion. I'm not saying turn down the bread, get your bread. But I'm in a position in my life where I have played in the NFL. I've seen people who have millions of dollars be unhappy, you know, and I've seen guys who maybe played 3 months be the happiest in their transition. So I've just come to the point of being able to truly be in the field of wanting to be happy. And my biggest thing is having impact. I don't feel like I've had the impact that I want to. And that's what makes me happy. I want to impact people the right way, you know, like, hence why I started the podcast. Like, my thing was, I want to bring conversations that I'm having daily to life on camera so that people can have something to tune into that they don't want to admit that they need, but you need it, you know, and it's okay. You don't have to, you don't have
no one's
to
asking you to admit publicly, but like, you know.
I know you need it, you know, so, and that's my goal with it. And I feel like I feel aligned with that. And I feel like it's where I'll have some impact.
Totally.
Yeah.
You started this podcast.
Yes.
And it's gone so well.
Yes. Thank you.
You, I feel like, have transformed. And I know you won't let me tie you down to a transformation, but I do think that you were something before and you are something else now. Yeah. Having dipped your feet in, gotten feedback, become a different type of interviewer. What had to change in you? Who have you become in this process of putting yourself out there? Putting yourself out there by yourself is not the easiest thing to do.
Yeah, it's not. And you know, it's crazy. Like, I was always someone who thought that I needed to collaborate with someone in order to feel comfortable, not to have success, but just to feel comfortable. And so being the main person, obviously there's a team behind it, you know, like, and I'm so grateful for everyone that helps me with that, my wife included, like, huge. But I think that the biggest thing that changed for me was just not caring what the opinions were, you know. The feedback's been great. Like, I've also been scrutinized at a high point from playing in the NFL, that this, to me, I can take the criticism if there is any, you know? So I just had to come to a place of like, so many people have been in this position of starting something new and have had this fear of failing.
Yeah.
If I let that win, I'll never know where this thing will end up. And I keep telling everyone, like, if it gets 10 views every week, I don't care. But I feel fulfilled that I'm having conversations with people that I really value, because it's healthy for me. And it's accountability at the end of the day. Like, the biggest thing for me was the imposter syndrome part of, like, jumping on a podcast, speaking about certain things, but not living that way. And I didn't want people to be like, that's not him. You know, like, no, that's me. Like, the podcast is 100% who I am. And I feel so comfortable when the camera starts rolling, because I don't have to, like, put on this front of who I am right now. Right.
You mentioned that the previous version of you felt like that you might need to collaborate to feel comfortable. Mm-hmm. Where has that come from?
I don't know. You know, I think that's just an insecurity. Like, and I'm past that now. Yeah. But it's definitely an insecurity. And I'm not scared to, like, I think so many people have this problem with admitting that they have an insecurity around whatever the case may be. Like, I'm not scared because I firmly stand on who I am, you know? So it was just an insecurity for me. You know, I had just people that I thought I would collaborate with, and, oh yeah, this would be good, you know? And it's always good to have someone that pushes you, in my opinion. But at what point do I step out on my own and, you know, believe that I can accomplish something on my own?
Right.
And I think it's more satisfying. Not, like I said, there's a team behind it, but it is satisfying going into it and coming out of an episode and being like, you know, damn, you did that. You know, like, it's something about, and you probably feel it as well, like being able to steer a interview the way you want to steer it, and having success with that. It just feels good.
Right.
So, you know, and it's a new, something that also hits is like, it's a new territory for me. And I could have went and did the same thing. I could have went and did something football involved, whatever, but I didn't feel like I was going to grow. So like, this is completely out of my comfort zone, and I'm learning a lot about myself in the moment. And that's a good feeling.
Yeah. I think it's been really beautiful to watch.
Thank you.
On the sidelines, you know, it's dope. All that you created is dope. And then from an embodied place, and not just being on a podcast and repeating things that you hear.
Yeah.
That has been, I didn't used to feel that way about things, but I think now that I'm having my own embodied wisdom type of conversations with people from a learned place, a lived place, directing conversations around that, it makes it easier to see, oh, you're just saying something that you heard. And I get that, because that's kind of where you're at. So it's been really dope to see you have these conversations from an embodied place, because that's where impact is at, not just in steering the conversation, but also in like your own learnings. And so
feeling organic, to be honest. Like, I tell everyone that I'm shooting a podcast with, like, I don't want this to be anything outside of what we normally do.
Yeah.
You know, I want this to be how our normal conversations are. It's just the cameras are here.
Right.
And everything that I've done so far feels like that. And that's the most rewarding part, I think.
Yeah.
Just having that organic feeling to these conversations.
Totally. I want to close with this. It's a question to you.
Yeah.
Your younger self.
Yeah.
Who maybe didn't know what they didn't know yet, and were just kind of operating off of all that they knew in that moment. What might they need to hear from this Jamil, the best Jamil that there's ever been, which is the Jamil today, here and now?
Yeah, that's tough. If I could tell my younger self anything, I would say stay hungry for growth and like learning. Don't think that, you know, life is just gonna come to you, and, you know, like, push yourself to learn new things, step out of your comfort zone, and you're gonna develop the way that you want to. I would say that there's so many different stages of my younger self that,
which is why I didn't plant an age, because I'm like, you might know who might need to hear whatever at whatever point in time. You know what's crazy?
I think that there's a time period, like, I categorize things by, it's almost like years at a time, you know? Like, there's so like portions of my life that I would tell myself different things. But I think where I'm at now, and the thing that excites me the most, is when I learn something new and I try something new and it works out, or, you know, I'm self-educating myself, diving down TikTok or whatever the case may be, like, just learning new things. Like, that's the most satisfying piece for me. So I would definitely say, like, as a whole, without categorizing in years, like, stay encouraged to learn more. And I think you're going to continue to grow the way you want to.
That's really beautiful.
What would you tell your younger self? Since you're asking me all the questions.
I would tell my younger self that you don't have to give it all away. And what I was going to say after you, and this will like land the plane, is that even in like shroom journeys, or when I've gotten like downloads, when I'm, you know, talking to God or whatever it is that I'm getting like messages from, and I mean wherever physical place. I feel like it's all so poetic. And just in this exercise of me asking you, I'm like, oh, that's why it's poetic. Because it's principled. You basically said, I know now that I love learning, so that I can just give you a statement on learning, and I know you will eventually find your way back to me, right? The Jamil now to the Jamil then. And like a singular pointed thing is only going to give you a fraction of information in that moment, but it wouldn't be a principled thing that you apply throughout life. And the principled thing that you apply throughout life is like teaching you how to fish instead of just giving you the fish in that moment of what you need to learn, right? And I feel like that, like even with my shroom journeys, I'm like, it all feels so poetic and so like prophetic. And like, I feel like a lot of the stuff in the Bible that God talks about is like poetic and prophetic, but it's because it's principled. Your higher self is going to give you a principled thing to apply to everything so that you can grow in that and grow into what you want to be.
For sure. It's almost, to me, it's like being process oriented instead of focusing on the end goal or where you are right now. Like, focus on the process of getting to where you want to go.
Right.
And like I said, people hear that, but they don't listen to it. Like, there's a difference between hearing and listening, in my opinion. When you truly listen to something, like, spend time with that, like, be process oriented, like, Google what that means and like dive into the actual definition of being process oriented and break that down for what it looks like for you, because that's how you get started. Totally.
I mean, even just in what I'm saying to myself, you don't have to give it all away. That can be in a bajillion different things.
Yeah.
It's in how I will emotionally monitor the room. How's everyone feeling? I can feel energetically how people are feeling. That's a trauma response, but I can feel it. It's my choice on to act on it. That'd be giving it away. It's not my responsibility to make anyone else feel good.
No.
They are responsible for making themselves feel good.
That's a them thing.
You don't have to give it all away, right? And then I can go into something else. Like, you don't have to give it all away. Or in that, when I told you I'll buy, I'll do this, I'll do that. You don't have to give it all away.
No.
So like, I'm actually really happy that you pointed that back and that we landed that plane, because that is like probably, in my opinion, I mean, you are a great guest, but that is like the most beautiful thing that I've been taking away from that. Yeah. That's why it's prophetic, and that's why it's like very poetic, because it's applied over the long term of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely, long term, like, look at it that way, you know, long term. This is a constant game of like evolving, instead of there's a you know, you got to be present, but there's also a way to be present and continue to look at things from a long-term aspect instead of short-term. And I think that's a healthy way to go about things.
Yep, you're absolutely right. Thank you so much, Jamil.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I'm less nervous now. So
good.
Thank you for having me.
Can I just say thank you so much for being here? It means the world to me that we're growing together. So if there's someone that you thought of while listening, please share it with them too. And when you share it, let them know that they're not on this journey alone. But also, if you just love this episode, take a screenshot, share it on Instagram, and tag me at Aisha so I can thank you for hanging with me on this journey. Oh, and one more thing. Don't forget to rate and write a review with your favorite takeaways so this podcast can be shared with more people. And before I go, I want to thank you again for being here.